50 camper van purchases. I tracked them for 2 years, and the results surprised me. The buyers who spent $65,000 were often in a worse financial position than the ones who spent $95,000. Not because of money, not because of luck, because of one decision they made before they ever saw the van. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly what it was. This isn't about which van looks best on Instagram. You can find 100 videos for that. This is about what separates buyers who are genuinely happy 2 years later from the ones who are quietly furious. I'm going to break down the 3 mistakes almost every first-time buyer makes, the framework smart buyers use that dealers will never volunteer, and a specific test you can run on any van before you spend $1. Stay until the end. There's one insight coming that directly contradicts what most of the van life community tells you. I think it's the most important thing I've said on this channel. One note before we start. This analysis came from tracking purchase outcomes through owner communities, resale data, and direct conversations with buyers over a 2-year period. Not a lab study, real purchase decisions, real results. Let's start with the mistakes. Understanding why people fail here is more valuable than any buying guide. Mistake number 1, buying the build instead of the platform. This is the biggest one, and it's not obvious until you're stuck with a $12,000 repair bill on a van that's only worth $28,000. When I started this analysis, I assumed the biggest factor separating good purchases from bad ones would be budget. Spend more, do better. I was wrong. Budget mattered far less than where buyers pointed their attention before the purchase. Most buyers walk into a dealership and fall in love with the kitchen layout, the wood finish, the fold-out bed, the solar setup. They're buying an interior. What they should be buying is a mechanical foundation, a platform that will dictate their repair costs, their parts availability, and their resale value for the next decade. 2 vans can look identical inside. One is built on a Mercedes Sprinter chassis, the other on a Ram ProMaster. Those are not the same purchase. The Sprinter has a global parts network, a massive independent repair community, and resale values that hold better than almost anything else in this category. The ProMaster has significantly lower upfront cost, easier U.S. maintenance access, but a resale curve that drops harder. Neither is wrong, but most buyers never have that conversation. They're talking about bed length and USB ports, while the most financially consequential decision in the purchase is sitting right there, completely ignored. Mistake number 2, calculating cost per day instead of cost per problem. I thought this would be the second biggest mistake. It turned out to be the one with the most painful outcomes in dollar terms. I looked at buyers who chose a conversion from a small build shop, $38,000 to $52,000 range, versus buyers who chose a factory-built unit from an established manufacturer in the $72,000 to $85,000 range. The custom-build crowd cited lower upfront cost as their reason, reasonable on the surface. 18 months later, the factory unit buyers had spent a fraction of what the custom-build buyers spent on maintenance and repairs. The custom-build buyers spent roughly 4 times more. Because factory builds have warranties, standardized components. When something breaks, and something always breaks, there's a clear path to getting it fixed. With a custom build, you're often dealing with whoever installed it, if they're still in business, with parts sourced from 4 different suppliers. The cheaper van was not cheaper. It was a down payment on future stress. Here's a real example. A couple, both retired, both excited, first-time buyers, found a beautifully converted Fiat Ducato from a small independent builder at $57,000. Stunning on delivery day. Custom cabinetry, premium fixtures, a solar setup that genuinely impressed people. They drove it home feeling like they'd found something special. 14 months later, the electrical system had failed twice. A water leak behind the panel had warped the cabinetry they'd paid a premium for. Total repair cost, just under $9,000. The builder, no longer responding to emails, no longer in business as far as anyone could tell. The warranty they thought they had existed on paper. In practice, it was worth nothing. But here's the part that hit me hardest when they told me about it. They said they stopped using the van after the second repair, not because it was broken, it was fixed, but because every trip started to feel like a risk instead of freedom. They'd bought it to escape. Instead, it became something they had to manage. That's the real cost, not $9,000, the loss of the thing they'd bought it for in the first place. They didn't buy a bad van. They bought from a builder who couldn't support what they sold. There was no way to know that on delivery day, unless they'd asked the right questions before they handed over the deposit. That's what this framework is designed to prevent. Mistake number 3, buying for the life you imagine, not the life you'll actually live. This is the emotional one, and it affects retirees and families more than anyone else. I've talked to buyers who purchased a massive Class B+ conversion because they pictured months exploring national parks. They use it 4 weeks a year. The van sits in a driveway. They're paying insurance, depreciation, and storage on a vehicle that's too large to drive casually, too fuel-hungry for short trips, and too intimidating for one of the two partners who doesn't like tight parking. Contrast that with buyers who bought something more modest, a 19 to 22-foot unit, asked hard questions before purchasing, and are now genuinely using it every 6 to 8 weeks. Lower depreciation, lower operating cost, actually getting value out of it. Most of them say the same thing when I ask what they wish they'd done differently. I wish I'd been more honest with myself about how we actually live before I made this decision. That's not a van problem, that's a self-knowledge problem, and it's fixable, but only before you sign. So, what did the buyers who got it right actually do differently? 3-part framework. This is what I saw consistently in the purchases that held up, the ones where 2 years later, the buyer is still using the van, still happy, and in the cases where they sold, came out ahead financially. Part 1. Platform-first thinking. Before you look at a single interior photo, ask one question. What is this van built on, and what does that platform mean for me specifically? Mercedes Sprinter, the gold standard for long-term ownership, global repair access, and resale value. Highest upfront cost, best if you're traveling extensively or plan to resell within 7 to 5 years. Ford Transit. Strong U.S. parts availability, one of the most common platforms, excellent for buyers who want lower costs in North America and will use independent mechanics. Slightly softer resale than the Sprinter, but the gap has narrowed. Ram ProMaster, lowest acquisition cost, solid for domestic buyers on a tighter budget, takes the biggest resale hit, best for buyers who plan to keep the van long-term and are less concerned about exit value. Fiat Ducato, dominant in Europe, very well supported across the continent. If you're a European buyer or travel to Europe, this platform deserves serious consideration. Purely US-based, parts access is more complicated. Smart buyers picked a platform first, understood the trade-offs, then found the best build on top of it that fit their budget. That sequence matters. Most buyers do it in reverse and pay for it. Part 2. The 5-year cost horizon. Not what does this van cost me this year, what does it cost me over 5 years? Run this for any van you're seriously considering. Purchase price minus realistic resale value at 5 years. That's your depreciation cost. Manufacturer warranty. What's covered, for how long, at what mileage cap. Maintenance intervals and parts cost for that specific platform. Repair exposure based on the manufacturer's track record, known for reliability or known for customer complaints. Most people assume this math favors cheaper vans. It usually doesn't. The $78,000 van with strong warranty, solid resale, and manufacturer-backed service is often cheaper over 5 years than the $54,000 van that depreciates harder and comes with no real support structure. Once I started running this model on the purchases in my analysis, the pattern became impossible to ignore. Part 3. The Dealer Blind Spot Test. Here's the question no dealership will ever proactively answer. What does it cost to fix this when it breaks, and who is going to fix it? Ask them directly. If my heating system fails at 60,000 miles, what's the warranty situation, who services it, and what does it typically cost out of warranty? A good dealer answers clearly. They know the system, the service network, they give you specifics. A bad dealer, or one selling something they can't really support, goes vague. They'll talk about build quality. They'll reassure you without answering. That response, or the absence of one, tells you more about the long-term ownership experience than any brochure ever will. Here's the insight I mentioned at the start. The the one the van life community doesn't want to hear. Most people are shopping in the wrong price bracket. When I first mapped the purchase outcomes, I assumed the middle range, $45,000 to $65,000, would perform somewhere between the budget end and the premium end. Reasonable assumption. What I actually found was that the middle bracket had the worst outcomes relative to what buyers expected to get. Here's why. A $57,000 van feels like a significant purchase because it is. At that price, buyers expect factory-level reliability and support. What they often get is a custom or semi-custom build with none of the backup. Too expensive to absorb as a pure depreciation hit, the way a $30,000 used unit might be. Not expensive enough to come with real warranty protection and resale retention. You're paying premium prices for a mid-tier ownership experience. I saw this pattern repeat. A family in the Northwest PArt bought a transit-based conversion at $61,000 from a regional builder. Solid reputation, good reviews. 2 years later, an appliance failure the builder technically covered, but with a 6-week wait for parts and a service center 4 hours away. They couldn't use the van for most of a summer season. No compensation, no real recourse. The warranty existed, the support infrastructure behind it didn't. Compare that to a retired teacher I spoke with who stretched to $84,000 for a factory unit. She told me it felt irresponsible at the time. 2 years later, she'd had one warranty claim, handled at a certified service center 40 minutes from her house, 0 out of pocket, van back in 4 days. She uses it 10 weeks a year and has 0 regrets. The middle is where dreams go to be financially disappointing. This doesn't mean every mid-range van is a bad purchase. There are excellent options in that range, but they require more expertise to identify than most first-time buyers have. The ends of the market are more forgiving. The middle punishes people who don't know exactly what they're buying. Here's what the process actually looked like for buyers in my analysis who came out ahead. They started with platform research before contacting a single dealership. They knew what chassis they wanted and why before they looked at an interior. That eliminated roughly 70% of the market immediately, not because those vans were bad, but because they didn't fit the buyer's specific parameters. They used the 5-year cost model, not the sticker price, depreciation, insurance, maintenance, fuel for their actual usage pattern. They treated it like a financial decision with a lifestyle attached, not the other way around. They asked uncomfortable questions to current owners, not just dealers. Forums, Facebook groups for that specific model. What is broken? What it cost? Would you buy it again? That information is freely available. Most buyers never look for it, and they walked away from at least one van they were emotionally attached to. Every single smart buyer in this analysis had that moment. The van they wanted versus the van that made sense. They chose the van that made sense. 2 years later, every single one of them said it was the right call. The direct version. Retirees and couples planning extended travel, 4 weeks per year or more, potentially full-time. Look at factory-built units on the Sprinter or Transit platform, $75,000 to $95,000 range, real manufacturer warranty. The Pleasureway Plateau TS, the Winnebago Bolt, the Airstream Interstate 24. Not cheap, but designed for people who are going to live in them. The service network is real, resale holds. You'll spend more now and significantly less over the life of the ownership. Families buying for seasonal use, summer trips, school holidays, 2 to 4 weeks a year, you have more flexibility. A well-maintained used unit on a Ford Transit or Ram ProMaster chassis in the $40,000 to $60,000 range can work well if you go in with clear eyes about the trade-offs. Lower resale, potentially more maintenance exposure, but lower total cost if your usage pattern is genuinely moderate. Full-time van life planners on a tight budget. This is the group I worry about most. The pressure to buy immediately is high. The romance of the lifestyle pulls toward decisions that don't hold up financially. If your budget is under $45,000, a well-inspected used unit with known history will almost always serve you better than a new custom build in that range. Go used, go mechanically sound, go simple. You can upgrade. You cannot always recover from a catastrophic repair on a build with no support structure. If you're in that $50,000 to $65,000 bracket, do the extra work. Don't buy on vibes in that range.
Research the manufacturer's reputation aggressively. Find owner communities. Run the 5-year cost model. Make sure you're not paying mid-market prices for entry-level reliability. Here's my honest take after 2 years of tracking these purchases. The campervan industry has genuinely excellent products. It also has buyers making emotionally driven decisions dressed up as research. They've watched the tours, read the specs, they feel informed, but they're not asking the questions that matter. The smart buyers aren't the wealthiest. They're not the most experienced travelers. They're the ones who treated this like a financial decision first and a lifestyle decision second. They asked uncomfortable questions, ran the numbers, walked away when the numbers said to. That discipline is uncomfortable in the moment. 2 years later, it looks like genius. Stop buying the dream. Buy the platform. Buy the warranty. Buy the support network. The van that impresses everyone on delivery day is not always the van you'll be happy with 3 years later. Smart buyers understand that before they sign. Everyone else learns it afterwards, and the tuition is expensive. Here's the question I want you to answer in the comments. If you were buying a campervan today, factory built with a real warranty or custom conversion with more character, and you had to live with that decision for 5 years, which one do you actually choose? Because I have a strong opinion, but I want to know where you land first.